Hey guys, what is up? I am David, and I am here with Rob Wass, the pretty much the main mastermind behind Clive N Wrench from Dinosaur Bite Games. This is awesome. We have talked to a handful of really awesome indie devs. We've talked to the Garden Story team earlier in the summer. We've talked to one of the devs for Going Under by Aggro Crab Games. Then we recently talked to some of the devs on Demon Turf from Fabraz Games, which is also another 3D platformer that I'm really interested in. But now we have you here, Rob, and you are pretty much in charge of, like I said, Clive and Wrench, which is a buddy duo platformer in the vein of pretty much 90s kids' favorite genres, I guess, like Banjo-Kazooie, Yooka-Laylee, all that type of stuff. But yeah, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
For sure. So really quickly, let's go over for people who don't know what Clive and Wrench is, who haven't heard of this game yet, who haven't pretty much heard of one of their favorite games of 2021, which is probably going to be one of mine, honestly. TLDR, really quick, what the base plot of Clive and Wrench is.
Okay, so Clive is a rabbit. His best friend is a monkey, and his cousin, also a rabbit, is a engineer and inventor. She invents time travel, but her plans are stolen by an evil doctor, who then proceeds to go back in time and try and make money and ruin the timeline.
Okay,
So,
cool,
feeling
cool.
guilty about it, she enlists the help of Clive and Wrench in order to undo everything that he's done and stop him before the timeline collapses on itself.
Okay, so we got a nice like time travel adventure going on here. This is cool. This is cool. I like that. I like that premise. It's like like I said, the classic like 90s fashion of this is the plot. Don't think too much on it, but we need a reason why you're going back in time in a refrigerator of all things.
Yeah.
So that's actually really cool. Not like you said, it was like a 1950s fridge.
Yep.
So
Yep.
like when I
Because
think of
it
yeah,
needed to be lead lined so that they weren't affected by the radiation of time travel.
isn't that also kind of like an Indiana Jones thing where he like avoided the
Yeah.
nuke with the refrigerator, right?
Yep.
I love that. That's great. But yeah, so this game is pretty much it's been like a passion project for you for like almost the last decade, basically going on a decade now. And you're pretty much like the sole mastermind, main person in charge of this game. So it's almost been a partially solo-driven project, which is why it's been taking so long. Yeah.
For the most part, yeah. I mean, like I collaborate with people like a composer and several programmers here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, for the most part, it's just me locking myself away and not talking to anyone.
Hey man, the hustle is real, and I'm pretty sure the results are going to show, and they have been showing, which is really awesome. You said composers for like collaborators. I gotta ask you because it's essential for 3D platformers nowadays. Did Grant Kirkhope or David Weiss or any of the the rare essentials catch wind of this game and help you out on any of the tracks? Or
I think some of them might be aware of it because I've had conversations with them in the past. But I made a conscious decision not to approach any of those guys
mm-hmm.
purely for the fact that while obviously I take a lot of inspiration from those games, I want to make sure that this game feels like unique.
Yeah,
It nods back to those things, and something about the music sounding like that, I think, would feel a little bit too much like I was
a
pandering.
little too on the nose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Um, and then like I said, you've been working on this game for a long time now, long time. But you've also been really transparent with the audience and the gamers throughout the whole process. Like you've been actively uploading and being active on Twitter, sharing clips, getting feedback from the community on what they think you should do with certain things. How do you feel that that's been with the development of the game, getting like input from the gamers throughout the process?
I mean, on the whole, it's been positive. It's a double-sided coin because there's of course detractors or people that feel uh, that they have, I don't know, some kind of ownership. So if I make a decision they don't like, it can go over badly. But no, for the most part, it's been a really positive experience because I can sort of almost immediately get feedback from the kind of people that want to play the game,
Mm-hmm.
and I know pretty quickly when I've made a mistake or when something works. So yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And then you've also been Was this game on Patreon or Kickstarter at any point? Because I know you have a
It's
Patreon, but
yeah, it's currently on Patreon,
okay.
and you can, if you support the $5 tier, you get monthly alpha builds for playtesting, all of that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's a
Um,
really cool incentive. Yeah.
it has actually in the past, and when I say in the past, like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, was on Kickstarter as well, but that was unsuccessful.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
unsuccessful monetarily, but successful in that it made me realize that I needed to take a new direction. So,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I was like actually wondering about the Kickstarter thing because it seems like a lot of like new and big indie titles like Shovel Knight, for example, Yooka-Laylee, a lot of those games ended up getting started or known through Kickstarter, and now they have like this feverish fandom, and also they're really big names. But I was wondering if Clive N Wrench took that approach. But it seems like even though you didn't go down that route, it seems like a lot of people have still caught wind of the game, and you have a pretty like loyal following at this point for people that have been spreading the word about it, especially since the trailers have also been getting into like Nintendo Directs and stuff or being promoted by Nintendo. So that audience already knows about the game. So it seems like you've been doing pretty good with what you've been working with for sure.
yeah, I think I've gotten quite lucky along the way. It's without any of that sort of extra backing at the beginning, it's been a bit of a slow burn. Um, but yeah, as of late, especially over the last couple of years, it's really been a bit of a snowball effect,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been very much appreciative of that.
Yeah, man. Like the hard work for sure is paying off in the long run. Um, so let's go into a little bit of your personal gaming history. Of course, like I've said time and time again, and I will keep saying throughout this interview, this game, as a 90s kid, gives me those vibes of games that pretty much establish genres. Banjo-Kazooie, buddy platformer duo, Mario 64, even like games for the PlayStation genres, Jack and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, those type of two characters in one type of deal. Um, like, what's your personal gaming history? Like, for example, I know one of your favorite games that you've notoriously mentioned a lot on your Twitter and also even here on Discord, your profile picture, Muppets Monster Adventure. So, were you a
Yeah,
PlayStation kid back in the day, and then you also got an N64?
yeah, I was a PlayStation kid. I didn't get an N64 until I was a teenager.
Mm,
So I grew up with, yeah, exactly that Muppet Monster Adventure, but also Spyro, Jack and Daxter. That was kind of my bread and butter, I suppose.
okay.
But it's always been 3D platformers for me. Whenever there's a new console out, I basically don't buy it until there's a 3D platformer on it, and then I'm
Yeah, that's
motivated.
the buy-in. Yeah.
Yep.
So like, what was your one of your favorite games? Like, what was it about like Muppets Monster Adventure, for example, or the 3D adventure genre that got you so well?
I think it was a mixture of the fact that it was the first genre that I really got into. So I was kind of, I guess, indoctrinated from the start. Uh, but it's just that mixture of freedom and direction. It just seems to work really nicely for me.
Hmm. Yeah,
You
freeform,
know, just
multiple
enough.
playgrounds type of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Just enough guidance so that you always have a clear goal in mind, but then it's like a playground. You can figure out how you achieve the goal on your own, and not many other genres offer that in the same way for me.
Hmm. But yeah, for sure. For me, the type of awakening for that type of genre. When I was a kid, I remember before I even had my N64. My cousins, they all had like N64s and they were playing Banjo-Kazooie, for example. But like until this layer always scared the crap out of me before I even like got the game. So that was like a point of entry for me. But also like Mario 64 was a really good game. But even when I was a kid, like the thing with 3D platformers is you can give a kid a controller with a 3D platformer and a 3D adventure game, and they can just be aimlessly running around doing nothing, and they're entertained for hours. Like so,
Yeah, exactly. It's
yeah.
just it really is just fun to move.
Hmm.
That's I think that's key to what separates good and bad 3D platformers.
Yeah, it seems
If
like you
you
really got the vibes for sure. I'm looking at the gameplay and stuff, and Clive and Wrench seem like they're really great characters to navigate with. So one thing I want to actually go into, why a buddy duo for this game specifically? Because I know, of course, the nods to those type of games, but you're playing as Clive, you're controlling Clive, and Wrench is also on his back. But couldn't you have just had Clive as the main character, and Wrench is kind of like the Tails to Clive Sonic or something like that, where he's in the background, or like what was the thought process on that?
Originally, it was Wrench didn't exist for like the first 4 years of development. There was no Wrench; it was just Clive.
Oh wow.
And as time went on, I needed to add more moves and abilities to Clive to make the levels interesting. So there was an awkward phase where I wanted him to be able to hover, so he had a jetpack, and then I wanted him to be able to attack, so he had a fireball glove. And it got to the point where it seemed pretty ridiculous that he had all of this equipment, and it didn't really add much to the character. It just seemed strange.
Mm-hmm.
So after I think I read an interview somewhere that they were talking about with Banjo-Kazooie's development was somewhat similar, where they had Banjo on his own and eventually realized that they needed a second character to justify some of the moves they wanted him to do, and realized that maybe that was the direction I should take. And then I did.
Okay. So just hearing their names, like when you hear Banjo and Kazooie, you're like, okay, instruments, and then in the opening of the game, they're playing instruments, and their names correspond to what they're playing. So Clive and Wrench, Clive, but then Wrench, I'm assuming he's like the tinkerer, and like he kind of works with maybe Clive's cousin or something like that, or what's Wrench's backstory then, for his reason to be?
Yeah, so you're kind of half correct. Yeah, he works with Nancy. He's like her protege, I suppose. But basically, and this is a running theme throughout the game, his name is there because it's a pun, and that's basically how a lot of things exist. So, in fact, it's two puns, because one, he's the monkey on Clive's back,
Mm-hmm.
but also a monkey wrench being
multi-tool. I just got that. A monkey wrench.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's actually really good. Oh, puns. Damn. That was good. Oh man. Yeah, that's awesome for sure. But like another thing with Clive and Wrench for sure, or at least with the gameplay, we'll talk about the inspiration for the gameplay. One thing that I got heavy vibes for, not only 90s kids remember, Conker's 12 Tales, which is a game that got canceled by Rare.
Yeah.
I for sure got a lot of vibes from that game in Clive and Wrench, because for instance, one of the things that really triggered that for me, in every level, Clive and Wrench have different little like outfits or hats or that they wear, and that kind of reminded me of how that was going to be a thing in Conker's 12 Tales, because he had like little hats and stuff. But then also Clive can run on all fours, and that's something that I haven't seen in a game in a long time. But Conker also was going to run on all fours. So did you kind of like be like, man, if they're not going to do it, I'm just going to freaking do it, I don't care? So
in a word, yes. Mm-hmm. It was a little bit afterwards. Like I said, I didn't really get an N64 until I was in my teens, but around that time I had the console, and I was quite sort of heavily into living bits of childhood I missed, I suppose. So I'm looking through magazines from the time and realized that there was 12 Tales, and obviously looked into the history of that. So there's always been in the back of my head, as although I like Conker's Bad Fur Day, it was always one of those things in the back of my head of such a shame we never got to have played that version.
Yeah,
of it.
what could have been.
Yeah, and so when it came to my own game, there was definitely, I guess, some fulfillment of of missing childhood, that I decided, yeah, okay, well, maybe I'll take some of those ideas and rework them.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think they fit in quite nicely.
They do, yeah, for sure. Let's see. So let's talk about a little bit of contextual reasoning. So even though Clive and Wrench is a 3D platformer, for sure, it's also a collectathon at heart, because there's a lot of different things that they're grabbing as they're in these different worlds and doing like little missions for all the characters that they're going to meet on their adventure. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, they have the notes and the jiggies and all the other stuff like that. Mario has his stars. Clive and Wrench, what are they collecting in their adventure? I'm seeing it looks like pocket watches, some type of coins and keys.
Yeah, pretty much. So pocket watches are um, visual representations of tears in space and time. So it's basically a trail of everywhere that Dr. Dorcas has been. He's torn through time and space. So by collecting those, you're repairing the timeline, which means that you can unlock different areas and follow him to different time periods.
Okay.
And then you've got the ancient stones, which are like the main power source that he's using. So you need to collect those so that he can't. And they're used to unlock the boss fights. And then you have to beat the bosses in order to unlock a section of the hub world that contains the next piece of the next timeline. And then the keys are, each level has a safe. So you have to find 5 keys in a level in order to unlock the safe, and that safe has one of the ancient stones in it.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's like
Gotcha. It's like the
so there's
Jinjos, kind of.
yeah, pretty much, yeah. So each level has a number of unique challenges, but there's usually a couple of more consistent ones. So you might be rescuing characters for one character, but there's always that staple of, you know, that one of the stones is going to be finding 5 keys.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of completion goes, are you making the parameters for like the base completion of the game where a player doesn't have to collect everything, but they can pretty much, like, almost like how with Mario games you can get 60 out of 120 stars and you can still roll credits, but then if you want to be a tryhard about it, you can go back and get everything and then get that true ending or whatever that is.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I'm still balancing out the progression there, sort of trying to find that sweet spot where it feels like you're motivated to keep playing, but it's not so high that you give up because this is impossible. I don't want to have to collect everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, one of those. This is for sure gonna be one of those games that I go through in just 100%. Like games like this are always fun. Where if you're like, oh, okay, it's a collectathon, so I'm just gonna just vibe out, run through the level, maybe find a couple nooks and crannies that I missed, and then find those extra little bits and pieces. But then, yeah, it's going back and through and 100% in collectathons is always like a fun time to me specifically.
Oh
Um,
yeah, me too.
yeah, and then in terms of the level theming, I really like how many worlds are there going to be in this game? 12 or something, I think.
11,
11. Okay,
uh,
cool.
11 worlds. Yeah,
And they're all based around different points in time or just different themes in general. And they also have different like puns in their names and stuff too, which I think is really cute.
yeah.
hmm Um, but yeah, so how did you go about thinking of the different timelines or different theming for the levels? I know there's like a pirate level, there's a train level where they're like doing a getaway on a long, like, ever working train. There's also like a monster mansion castle type of thing. You're in Egypt in one, you're in like the bayou in another.
Yeah, so each world has basically 2 levels within it. You'll have one main world, which is the big sort of open space, uh, explorable area, and then the other one is a level based around the boss. So sometimes it's a big fight, other times it's like a more linear gauntlet type level, or it could be like a Crash Bandicoot homage run towards the screen type level, you know, that kind of thing.
hmm
But as far as figuring out the themes, I think it's just been a case of uh, figuring out a bunch of ideas that make sense for a level structure, and then figuring out which time period would best fit that. I think there's also one of the main reasons that time travel was the choice for the backbone of the story, because it meant that I wasn't restricted by anything. If I had an idea that, you know what, I really want to do a cowboy level, I could just do that and it would make sense.
hmm
Because I've always, although the story isn't unimportant, that's always taken second fiddle to the gameplay and interesting levels, because nobody's going to care about the story if the levels are boring to play, you know?
Yeah. And then also because you have 11 different worlds, there's also what seems to be 11 different main. I'm guessing these are bosses or supporting characters.
Yeah.
Next to Clive N Wrench, his cousin, and also the main antagonist. So how did that go with designing every level? You also had to have a major plot point or like subplot in each of the levels. Yeah.
So the main levels that you don't tend to see the bosses until you reach whatever their main level is in person. But the level is usually uh, littered with references to them and like environmental storytelling stuff, so you can get a good idea of who that character is before you meet them. Probably a good example is in Egypt. Cleopatra is the main boss, and you go through her city and you meet characters and they'll tell you of the terrible things that she's done. So there's a there's a little grey alien who's landed his UFO in the middle of town because he's looking for his crew because she's enslaved them to build her pyramids. So you have to free them, and so it's a case of trying to make sure that you realize how bad this person is, so that you're really motivated when you get there to beat them.
Yeah, I really like that actually, where it's each individual world is not just its own like barren space where it's just like, okay, I gotta get these things and leave. It's, oh, there's a subplot going on here. There's characters that are actually being affected in each of these, and we gotta help them. So yeah, I like when
Definitely.
games do that for sure. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of different characters that players are going to end up uh, getting attached to. I really like the cowboy level. How there's I'm not sure the context of this. I'm pretty sure there's more to this area than just the train sequence, but there's like that like squirrel cowgirl character.
Hmm.
Is she like going to be one
Yeah,
of the main supporting characters for that area?
yeah. She's the main Annie Oaktree. She's the main boss of that area.
Oh, okay.
And so her plotline is that there's a train full of sheriffs that are all going on an annual get together journey. So she switches the train tracks so that they go into an unfinished piece of the track because they're going to plummet to their doom, and then she can run riot over the town because there's no law enforcement anymore. So Clive and Wrench have to get to the front of the train and pull the brake before you fall off a cliff.
That's great. Love it. Let's see. And then we're going to backtrack a little bit. I wanted to talk on how you said you were collaborating with so many people on this project. One of the main draws that I love so much about this game is for sure like the illustrations and the main character renders for the game. And I actually followed one of the like the main artists for Clive and Wrench, Roger. What was his name?
Louis
Yeah,
Luigi
yeah,
Luca, I think.
Luigi. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been following his art for a long time, and then I noticed the character models. I was like, oh, that looks familiar. So I looked into it, and I saw that it was him. So that was a really cool get, and I guess to see that other independent artists are also working with indie game developers, getting their art styles on stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I met uh, around that time that the Kickstarter fell through was when I met Luigi, and we got talking, and he agreed to initially redesign Clive and Wrench in his style because I always loved his work, which he did. And at that point, I realized, okay, if the characters look that good when he designs them, then I just need him to design all of the characters. So
Hmm.
then it was a case of uh, each time I finalized the idea of who a character was and which level they were going to fit in, it was going to him with lists and lists of information about who the character was, references, all of that kind of stuff. And then he, every single time, came back with a character design that was way better than I could have hoped for.
I
Um,
love seeing collaborations like that for sure, especially when they're kind of unexpected. Because, like I said, I've been following him for a long time, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, his art's being used in a video game. That's pretty dope. So yeah.
yeah,
And then considering that you also have those just basically official characters that everyone can get drawn to in not only the game space but also just on a illustration space as well. That's really awesome. Um,
mm,
and then I also want to talk about things that you've learned since you've been in development with this game for so long. So many other indie 3D adventure platformers have come out since then. Namely, I'd say like Hat in Time, for example, is a really big one. Yooka-Laylee is another game in the same vein, buddy platformer type of thing. Uh, what are some things that you've learned or seen from those games that you kind of were like, okay, I should probably take this into consideration, or I probably should not do this? Because, for example, with me, and I feel like a lot of gamers feel this way, Yooka-Laylee had the potential with their first game to be amazing, but then their worlds were way too big and too barren. So it seems like you, for sure, at least in my eyes, the world design seems a lot more compact and busy to do than in contrast to that game's design where there was too much space and not enough to do. So like, what are some things that you kind of picked and choose or got from those?
Yeah, it's kind of quite handy, I suppose, that when I started it, there was really no modern 3D platformer collectathons around, and that was why I started it in the first place. But seeing, yeah, things like reviews and discussions and fans reacting to those games have been very handy to just exactly like you say, when somebody has an issue with that, it's a case of, okay, so I need to make sure that with my levels, if I'm creating a space, there needs to be plenty of landmarks so that people can't get lost. There needs to be plenty to do. So it sort of gives me the idea that I need to make sure that I can justify an area existing, or else it just gets cut out. And there have been quite a few moments like that where I've sort of cut out a big chunk of the level because it was just pointless. There wasn't enough to do, or it was too samey, whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
But I think more of the things I've learned have been personal, sort of realizing a lot of things to do with game design that people discuss as a given, like the kinds of things that you would learn on a game development course, for instance. There are rules in place that make sense, and there are rules in place that don't make so much sense. So you can end up, I think, limiting yourself unnecessarily if you just take everything that everyone says as gospel,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like take things into consideration, but don't
Yeah,
make that the actual set in stone rule of how things should go.
yeah, by all means, like I'd never want to ignore advice, or especially from someone who's experienced.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, it's sort of trying to find a balance between taking that advice on board and deciding whether or not it applies to what I'm doing. Because I've made a number of mistakes that I've then backtracked from because I was too quick to jump to the conclusion that that person's probably right, and then I do something and it's actually overall worse. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that I've learned.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah. Um, yeah. There's a lot of things, especially since there's like, is this your first game that you've ever done, or is this just like the biggest game you've ever done?
Yeah, it's the first game
Okay.
I've ever
Oh
done.
yeah,
I've
really
tried
good project for
mods and
first.
stuff before.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, learning as you go, but also really good first project for sure. And let's talk about last few questions here. Let's talk about like what the best timeline and like optimal future for Clive and Wrench would be in your eyes, right? So let's say this game, it's mainly you with collaboration. Game launches, does well, like you end up getting a bigger team, bigger budget. Like what would you say is like what would be the Clive and Wrench 2 to like dream project for you if you were to like look that far into the future, or things you've thought about?
I think it depends on what people like about the first game, if people like anything about the first game, of course. But I think, yeah, it depends on that, because if people really like a certain aspect of it, then that would change my feelings on what I would want to do next. But I would definitely want to do something with Clive and Wrench if I can, because I think it's an interesting universe to work within.
Mm-hmm.
But mainly, it's a case of if this all works out and Clive does well, then I can carry on making games. But if Clive doesn't do well, then I'll have to go back to a day job.
Well, yeah, I think you should. I think you should do good because like one thing that I've noticed with at least especially with 3D indie platformers at least in all the main ones that have come out lately, those characters take off, and people really end up connecting to 3D platformer characters, if anything. So for sure, we could see. I mean, take Yooka-Laylee for example. Their game was swimming in sevens, and now they're pretty much like the Shovel Knight of the 3D platformer genre. They're in everything nowadays, and I could see people really glomming onto Clive N Wrench's characters, and they could go places for sure. I feel like the fandom for sure would carry them when they drop. So I think you have little to worry about in that regard. High hopes. For
Well,
sure.
thank you. I hope you're right.
Yeah, and even speaking of like Yooka-Laylee in the future for Clive N Wrench, you even have like what is a minor cameo or like some type of cameo. You have Trouser the Snake from Yooka-Laylee in one of the levels in this game so far. Is he only in one level, or is he just gonna be like the bottles to Clive N Wrench's game or something?
He's only in the one level, but he has like a specific quest, and he blocks the way, so you can't get through the level unless you.
He's making you pay the toll.
Yep.
Greedy snake. But yeah, that's awesome that you even got them to lend you a character for a little cameo like that. That's great.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing to be honest that it all worked out.
Awesome.
There's no way that I would have believed that I would be, working with the guys and girls over at Platonic. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I would not have believed that.
Yeah, pretty much similar energy, honestly. Like they're all ex-Rare devs, and they made their passion project game, and you're a passionate player and fan, and you're making your own passion project games. I could surely see more stuff happening for you in the future for sure. But yeah, I think we're at a good time to wrap things up here. Really good interview, really good things you said here, man. I'm for sure still excited about Clive N Wrench. Like I said, I'm pretty sure they're gonna take off, especially with the Nintendo fans. The Nintendo fans are gonna eat this up for sure. But yeah, as of right now, you're in the 2021 window. No specific month stamp at all, but it seems like things have been moving pretty swimmingly. So, do you have any guesstimations or anything you can say right now for release in the next year, or how things have been going development-wise?
Things have been going well, but I can't really, or I wouldn't want to give a very specific date.
Yeah,
I just don't want to do that.
I know you said stuff about people who are on the Patreon, they get access to alpha beta builds of the game. Is that still a thing that's possible right now?
Yep.
And it's in the $5 tier, right?
Yep, with the $5 tier, I do. There's usually a bunch of extra content or tweaks and fixes or whatever from the previous month.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, so if you want to support Clive N Wrench and be a part of pretty much the Game Testers Guild over there, you can for sure follow them on Patreon. I'll put the link in the description in the video. So for sure, hit them up, give this game some support, give it some love. And yeah, thank you so much, Rob, for this interview, for this talk. Big fan.
Thanks for having me.
Looking forward to seeing what happens with this game. It's going to be great.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
For sure. And also, really quickly, drop all of your social medias and all of your all the ways people can learn about Clive N Wrench and also follow you.
You don't mean links, do you? You mean you mean just say it.
Oh yeah.
My bad.
Oh no, you're good.
Probably the best place would just be at Classic GJ on Twitter. That's like the most updated place, or on the Dinosaur Bites YouTube channel. I'm practically sharing new stuff, if not every day, every week on there.
Yeah, that's how I've been keeping up with the game for sure. Twitter is a very active space for this game. So yeah, that's all we got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye bye.